The banquet hall shimmered with gold chandeliers and polished marble, a place designed for celebration. Yet for me, it felt like a theater of judgment. My shoes clicked softly on the floor as I followed my parents through the crowd, their posture tall, their faces stiff. I was their shadow, not their pride, and everyone in the room seemed to know it. Mother leaned toward father, whispering words she didn't bother to lower for me. He's wasting his life. All those years of schooling, and what has he to show for it? Nothing. Father exhaled through his nose, a sound halfway between disappointment and disgust. A failure, that's what he is. We raised him better, and this is what he became. The words were sharper than any blade, not because they were spoken, but because they were spoken aloud. Here, in public, where strangers could hear and nod in quiet agreement. I swallowed the lump in my throat, but silence was my only armor. I had learned long ago that arguing only deepened the wounds. Still, I wanted to scream, to tell them that every sleepless night, every missed meal, every setback had been fuel, not failure. But in that moment I was just their son, the one who didn't live up to their image. The irony hung heavy. They had no idea why we were here tonight. The invitation had not been for them. It had been for me. The crowd's hum was thick with chatter. City officials, business leaders, journalists, each holding a glass of champagne that sparkled under the light. My parents mingled at the edge, pretending they belonged, while I stood apart, invisible yet aching to be seen. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored wall. Black suit, tie perfectly knotted, but my eyes betrayed the storm. Behind the mask of composure was a boy who had once begged for approval and a man who had built something stronger than their doubt. But they didn't see it. They never did. A voice over the microphone called for attention, and the room hushed. My pulse quickened, though I kept my face still. A spotlight lit the stage where the mayor himself, towering in confidence, adjusted the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone commanding, "tonight we celebrate not just progress, but partnership." Applause rippled through the crowd. I could feel my parents straighten beside me, anticipation flickering across their features. They assumed this night was about someone else, someone worthier. They were wrong. The mayor's words rolled through the hall, building momentum, each sentence carrying the weight of recognition. And though he had not yet spoken my name, I knew the moment was near. My parents' scorn still rang in my ears, but soon, their certainty would fracture. I stood in the shadows of chandeliers, breath steady, heart pounding, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer be my shield, when truth would step into the light. The mayor's voice echoed through the banquet hall, commanding the air with practiced authority. "Tonight, we gather to honor a vision, not of one individual, but of collaboration, of resilience, and of belief in something larger than ourselves." The words struck me differently than they did the others. To the crowd, they were ceremonial. To me, they were prophecy. My parents, however, leaned toward each other again, the faintest roll of my father's eyes betraying impatience. "This is the kind of talk politicians always give," he muttered under his breath. "Grand words, no real meaning." Mother's hand brushed his sleeve, but her gaze drifted briefly to me, sharp as glass. "At least some people here have achieved something." The sting landed harder than I expected, though I knew it by heart. For years, their version of success had been rigid doctor, lawyer, corporate executive. Safe titles in neat frames. To them, my choices had been reckless detours. The sleepless nights spent drafting proposals, the rejections that carved out resilience, the relentless pursuit of a dream they could not understand. All of it invisible. But invisibility was by design. I had kept my work hidden, my progress close, waiting for the day it could speak louder than I ever could. That day was tonight. I scanned the crowd, my eyes catching the familiar faces of colleagues, people who had walked with me through every stage of my project. Engineers, community organizers, business partners. Most of them looking far too polished to hint at the blood and grit it had taken to get here. Yet seeing them gave me a quiet strength. I wasn't alone, even if my parents thought I was stranded in failure. The mayor shifted slightly, leaning forward on the podium. His next words drew the hall into silence. For years, our city has faced challenges too large for any one office, too heavy for any single administration. But when vision meets courage, even the impossible begins to bend. Applause broke out, but I caught my father clapping mechanically, his eyes scanning the stage for a face that matched the speech. My mother tilted her head, whispering, "Must be some businessman from out of town. No one local has that kind of influence." I almost laughed, though not out of humor. They were guessing at strangers when their son stood beside them, pulse roaring with the weight of revelation. The lights dimmed just slightly, a spotlight illuminating the front of the hall. The mayor's hand lifted, gesturing toward the wings where I knew my name waited to be spoken. The anticipation swelled inside me, sharp and electric, like thunder before the storm. I closed my eyes for the briefest second. I remembered every dismissal, every time they told me to be realistic, every look of pity when I walked into family gatherings without the shiny badge of corporate success. Each memory stacked upon the other until it became armor. When I opened them again, the stage was still glowing, the mayor's words still building toward their inevitable crescendo. And in that breathless moment, I realized something. The announcement wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. Still, I couldn't deny it. I wanted them to hear it, to feel it, to finally see. The hall leaned forward, waiting for the name that would cut through expectation like a blade. The mayor's voice dropped, heavy with intention. "This evening, I have the honor of introducing someone who embodies the very spirit of this city, a partner whose vision has already begun to reshape our future." The room stilled. Forks paused mid-air, conversations died, and even the chandeliers seemed to glow brighter in expectation. I felt my parents stiffen on either side of me. My father leaned forward, scanning the front rows, convinced it must be some familiar tycoon. My mother pursed her lips, her eyes darting across the stage like a hawk searching for prey. And then the words fell. "Please welcome my partner in this initiative, Mr. Adrian Reyes." The sound of my name cracked through the hall like lightning splitting the sky. For a second, I thought I had misheard it. The air around me seemed to vanish, replaced by the stunned silence of hundreds of eyes turning in unison toward me. My father blinked, his jaw slack. What did he just say? My mother's hand froze mid-clap, confusion twisting her expression into disbelief. It was me, their son, the failure they had dismissed not even 10 minutes earlier. Applause erupted, thunderous and alive, and the spotlight swung toward where I stood. The light was blinding, hot against my skin, but it wasn't suffocating. It was liberating. Every step toward the stage felt unreal. The polished floor gleamed beneath me, each click of my shoes amplified by the silence my parents carried in their throats. I could feel their stares burning into my back, but I didn't turn around. The mayor extended his hand, firm and certain. "Adrian, none of this would have been possible without you." I clasped his hand, my grip steady though my heart was a storm. The applause surged again, and in that flood of sound, something shifted inside me. For years, I had craved my parents' recognition, their approval, their simple acknowledgement. But standing here in front of the city, I realized I no longer needed it. Yet that didn't erase the ache. As the mayor continued to speak about our project, the renewable energy initiative that would transform neighborhoods and lower costs for families, I scanned the crowd. Faces beamed, nodded, admired. And in the corner, I saw my parents. Frozen, small in their own disbelief. My father's lips were parted, as though he wanted to form words but had none. My mother's eyes shimmered, caught between pride and shame. The sight should have satisfied me, but instead, it unsettled me. Because for all their judgment, they were still my parents. And part of me wondered, did they see me now? Or had they only seen the spotlight? The applause waned, the mayor gesturing for me to address the audience. I stepped toward the podium, the weight of expectation pressing down. This was my moment, not just to bask in victory, but to decide what kind of son, what kind of man I wanted to be. The microphone waited, gleaming under the lights, and as I leaned in, I knew the next words I spoke would not only define me in their eyes, but in my own. The microphone stood inches from my lips, catching the tremor in my breath. 1,000 faces stared back at me, their applause fading into an expectant silence that felt heavier than stone. I glanced down at the speech I had prepared, safe words about progress, partnership, sustainability. But the paper felt hollow in my hands. My project wasn't built on empty slogans. It was carved from years of sacrifice, rejection, and nights where I questioned whether any of it mattered. And here, under the chandeliers, I realized the speech wasn't about the city alone. It was about me. I raised my eyes, scanning the room. Colleagues, leaders, strangers, all waiting. And then my gaze locked on the corner of the hall. My parents. Father's arms were crossed, his jaw tense, as if still searching for proof that this wasn't some mistake. Mother's hands rested on her lap, her eyes shimmering in a way that unsettled me. Part astonishment, part fear. My throat tightened. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, the day they would finally see me. And yet, standing here, the truth sank deep. Even if the mayor, the city, the world applauded me, their silence could still cut me open. I gripped the podium. When I started this journey, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. I was told it was impossible, that I was chasing something fragile, that I should be realistic. The word cracked slightly as it left me, but I pressed on. The audience leaned closer, sensing there was more at stake than formality. I won't pretend it was easy. There were nights when failure wasn't a fear, it was my only companion. Nights when I believed the voices that told me I wasn't enough. A ripple stirred through the crowd. My colleagues nodded, some with tears threatening at the edges of their eyes. They had lived pieces of this with me. I drew in a sharp breath. And sometimes, those voices weren't from strangers. The words hung in the air, raw and jagged. My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. I let my eyes drift back toward my parents. My father's shoulders stiffened, his face a mask of stone. My mother lowered her gaze, as though the floor itself had accused her. The hall was silent, utterly still. I could feel the weight of the next choice pressing against my ribs. I could expose every wound, drag their judgments into the light, and let the applause wash away the years of hurt. Or I could rise above it, show them and myself that my worth was not measured in their approval, nor in my resentment. The mayor shifted behind me, sensing the heaviness of the moment but giving me space. I swallowed, my palms damp against the polished wood of the podium. The hall was waiting. My parents were waiting. And for the first time, so was I. The next words I chose would decide everything. The silence was unbearable, the kind that pressed against your skin, demanding you either break or rise. My hands tightened on the podium until the wood bit into my palms. I could have stayed safe, delivered the polished speech, bowed under the applause, walked away untouchable. But what good was triumph if I left the truth unspoken? My voice came low at first, almost trembling. All my life, I've been told to measure myself by titles, by trophies, by what others could proudly present at dinner parties. And when I chose differently, when I chose a path that didn't fit that mold, I was called a failure. Gasps flickered through the audience, whispers sliding across the hall. I didn't stop. My words were no longer for them. They were for the two figures seated in the corner, shadows of authority that had shaped me more than I had ever admitted. I carried that word, failure, like a stone in my chest. Every rejection, every stumble, it echoed louder. And worst of all, it came from the people I wanted most to believe in me. The words cracked, my voice breaking against the weight of them. My throat burned, but the dam had split, and everything I had buried for years surged out. I wanted to quit, I admitted, my eyes blurring under the heat of the lights. Not once, not twice, too many times. Because if your own parents look at you and see nothing, you start to wonder if you really are nothing. The hall was frozen. Not a glass clinked, not a shoe shuffled. The chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. I let my gaze pierce the crowd until it found them. My father's jaw was clenched, his fists resting stiffly on his knees. My mother's hand covered her mouth, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. For once, they weren't looking through me. They were looking at me, and in that stare, I found the strength to continue. But I didn't quit. Couldn't, because I realized. I paused, the words trembling on my tongue, then steadied. My worth is not a reflection of anyone's approval, not even yours. The last words rang like a blade drawn clean. My chest heaved, every muscle taut, every nerve alive with fire. The audience erupted into applause, louder than before, standing, cheering, but I barely heard it. My entire world was narrowed to the corner of the hall, to the two faces unraveling in the light of truth. For a split second, I thought I saw it, the crack in their certainty. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother's lips quivered as if searching for words she had never dared speak. And in that moment, something inside me loosened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but release. I had spoken the truth. I had faced them. And whether they accepted it or not, I was no longer bound by the silence they had chained me with. I stepped back from the microphone, chest burning, vision sharp. The climax had come, not in their applause but in my freedom. The applause still thundered in my ears as I stepped back from the podium, but it no longer felt like validation. It felt like background noise to a deeper sound, the quiet unraveling inside me. For the first time, I was no longer holding my breath. The mayor clasped my shoulder, his words of praise lost in the swell of voices. I smiled faintly, nodded where I should, but my eyes drifted back to the corner of the hall. To them, my father stood, his posture unsteady, as though the ground beneath him had shifted. My mother's hands trembled in her lap, her gaze fixed on me with something I had never seen before, something between regret and wonder. For a heartbeat, our eyes locked. There was no apology spoken, no grand gesture, just silence. A silence heavy with years of misunderstanding, with words left unsaid, with love too often hidden behind judgment. And in that silence, I understood. Tonight's revelation wasn't about forcing them to see me differently. It was about me finally seeing myself clearly. The evening blurred after that. Photographs snapped, journalists surged, colleagues embraced me with warmth that I had once craved from my own blood. Yet none of it filled the ache, and none of it hollowed me either. I was simply free. When the event ended, I lingered at the doorway. My parents approached slowly, like travelers uncertain of the road ahead. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again, words failing him. My mother reached for me, her fingers brushing my sleeve as though afraid I would pull away. For years, I would have begged for something. An apology, a confession of pride, a single phrase to stitch the wounds shut. But standing there, I realized I no longer needed it. Their silence was not my burden anymore. I gave them a small nod, not of surrender, but of peace. "Take care of yourselves," I said softly, and stepped into the night. The city stretched before me, alive with lights, the air cool against my skin. I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight that had haunted me dissolve into the darkness. For once, the word failure no longer clung to me. It had been rewritten, not by applause, not by the mayor, not even by my parents, but by the resilience that had carried me here. As I walked toward the waiting car, I caught my reflection in the glass doors behind me. The man staring back wasn't the boy who had once begged for approval. He was someone who had stood in the light, spoken the truth, and refused to shrink. The world would remember the mayor's speech, the project, the headlines. But for me, the moment that mattered was quieter. The choice to stop waiting for permission to exist. The night swallowed the noise of the hall, leaving only the rhythm of my footsteps. And with each step, I carried not the echoes of failure, but the certainty of freedom. Final line, poetic close sometimes. The loudest victory isn't in proving others wrong. It's in finally silencing the doubt they left within you.